Did you voice any other characters in Inquisition? And if so, who was your favorite, other than Josephine?
Other than Josephine. One of the Dwarven people in Halam Sharal, kind of in the back in that Moonlighty area by the two sets of stairs going up to the library and to the royal wing. Why do I remember this so well? Probably because I played the out of this game. I played like a couple people scattered around Halam Sharal in general, like random party guests saying varying degrees of judgmental things. It was great. My favorite of the judgmental or Legion lines was no, it's obviously a vestibule. It's like the obvious. It's like the people talking about whether or not the room is an antechamber or a vestibule. Foyer? What is this room called? You know, at the end of every session, Caroline would be like, "Want to voice some NPCs?" I'd be like, "Yeah, let's do this." So yeah, random relations. The dwarf woman there. I am also a random dwarven enemy that you can fight. I'm just one of the random sound sets for dwarven Carta people that you can fight. Mm-hmm. So occasionally I am the one screaming. That was really fun to record. Like, a lot of fun to record. Particularly because it was like Josephine herself. Okay, so we actually did end up at one point recording an exertion palette for Josephine.
Really?
But like I think because for whatever reason it said that I had to have one. But as we were recording it, Caroline and I were looking at each other like, why is this here? Like, why am I recording this? Like, what? So we recorded a lot of like running and grunting sounds, and it was like, but why? Why? We were both very confused, particularly because my joke was that if Josephine did have an exertion palette, it would have to be for the scene where the ambush scene with the assassins with the fake Duke, Comte Boisvert.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, when you take the boards and you're like, nah, you're gonna fight. I was like, is it for that scene? I don't understand, because my entire idea of how that scene should go, if Josephine were to actually fight in it, would be to like pick things off of the table and off of the bookshelves and just scream and yell and throw them. It's like, oh my god! And that should have been her exertion palette. So now you know what Josephine sounds like when she's upset. So that was a lot of fun to record. A couple other random more legions scattered around. I am Clara in the Emerald Graves. Oh. That is the one named character I voice, and she was so cute. I love her so much. I think she's probably my favorite. No. I know my favorite. I was one of the judgy nuns in front of nun nurses right in front of the Haven Chantry. So I'm the one who didn't have sex with the Iron Bull. The one going... I'm the one going like, you can't, seriously, that guy. Like, come on. So, I'm like recording this and I'm like, damn, this is fun. So that was, I think, my favorite part to record. I'm missing a couple right now. So I got Clara. Clara was also really cute. She was so fun to record. In Val Royeaux, I was a woman talking to one of the guys in Val Royeaux about the wardens. Oh. So occasionally I would make commentary about like the wardens and like the general perception of the wardens. And then finally on Blackwall when he's revealed. And then I am Crestwood Merchant.
Oh.
Very, very sad and tired Crestwood Merchant. So yeah, which was great too, because one time I was going around to every merchant in the game trying to find a specific schematic. Okay, so you know how like the schematic you can get like the thigh-high boots, and they're like super hot. I was trying to find that for mages because I wanted my mage to wear like sexy ass thigh-high boots. Like, come on, really, like no brainer here. But I couldn't find them anywhere. I think I'm gonna have to continue farming Solden. Not Solden. What the? No, wait. Yeah, the where the Blade of Sullivan is found. What is that area called?
Is it like the Temple of Sullivan? Is it that?
Maybe. Yeah. So it was Sullivan Keep is what I like to fondly call Fort Josie, and the Blade of Sullivan. Yeah, the Cradle of Sullivan. That's what it was. The farming for tier 3 schematics there. I'm probably going to have to keep farming to actually find it. But the last merchant I checked with was a Crestwood merchant. And I'm like, come on, me merchant, you gotta have it. And of course she didn't. And it was like, it's to me. Like, come on, you betrayed me. Me. Like, it's like, this is so upsetting. Like, why didn't I have it so I could buy it? Like, man. So, yeah, I want to say, a judgy nurse nun in front of Haven was one of my faves to record. Just because of, like, it went from, like, lines about, like, oh, we don't have enough bandages and things like that to all of a sudden, oh, you can't go making cow eyes at one of those oxmen. And it was like, that escalated quickly. We went from talking about the terrible situation and how many people are wounded to, like, so you rode that D, didn't you? Oh, of course you did. So, yeah.
What was it like voicing a character, such as Josephine, with an Antivan or Italian accent?
Every time there were too many R's in a sentence, Sylvia would get a stern talking to. That was always the thing. Like, there were certain words, like, rarely was a really difficult word to say. Like, I could say it, like, rarely. Partially because I made the decision with Josephine, like, to roll all the R's, which isn't something that all Italians do specifically in Italian accent. Like, it's basically the way that in brief, there's something called the International Phonetic Alphabet, where it's like basically the vocabulary of sounds for every single language. So it's universal and it's really wonderful. And every single language or accent or dialect uses a different set of sounds. And not like a different, like there's a lot of overlap and stuff like that, but a lot of approaching accent work is going like, okay, so this sound over here, it turns into this sound if you're trying to do this kind of accent. So that's how we were trained to approach accent work. So since we learn it that way, it kind of ends up sounding a little bit more like every single sound shift that could happen happens, as opposed to the way I like to describe it is when you're learning another language for the first time, the first thing you do is you try to make it sound like you don't have an accent. Like, if you're taking, like, when I learned Italian, for instance, the first thing I did was I made sure to roll on my R's and, like, hit the certain sounds. You know, by that token, when people learn English, the first thing they do is they try to erase their accent so that they sound as British or American or whatever version of English they're learning as possible. Like, there's only so much you can do, but like with an R sound, you're gonna try to switch your R sounds and stuff like that. So knowing that it wasn't necessarily going to be the most realistic thing, I chose to do it because it would still hit all of the high notes that people needed to understand. This is an Italian accent. This is what an Italian would sound like. So that brief bar aside, it definitely made certain words a lot more difficult. So, like, rarely could be said, but as soon as it was fit into a sentence, it was like, oh my god, I can't get all these R's off of my tongue. And so we'd like, Caroline and I would stop sometimes, and I'd have to, like, really slowly sound out a line, and it was always really frustrating because I was always a two-taker. I do everything in 2 takes, except when there are so many R's. And, I just go like slowly read the line so I know how to pronounce it. Okay, I'm good to go. Like, do it like that. So every time there were too many R's in a line, I would just be like, Sylvia, can we please just change that word, please? Like, there's a synonym we can use, certainly. And it actually made it really interesting because she got really good at, like, knowing and, being very aware that, like, that's going to be really hard for Allegra to say. And I'm sure the editors were also very aware, like, is Allegra going to have a hard time saying that? It's fine. If it can get off my tongue, it becomes second nature. And sure enough, like I said before, like, the first couple times, like, the first time you're, like, trying to get a sense of what Josephine sounds like, there's always this, like, it feels a little bit more like juggling. The accent and the acting, but then as soon as I knew exactly what she sounded like, the accent became just part of the costume, in a sense. Like, it was just part of the role. It was part of who she was, part of her identity. So after, I want to say, the first session, I was like, all right, I'm good. Like, that's cool.
So some voice actors, when they prepare for roles, have to do kind of quirky things to really ground and get their voice right. Like some voice actors record barefoot, or some
That's
have
me.
some other way to get ready.
I record barefoot.
You record barefoot.
I do. You know what? Because I wear heels most of the time, and I don't want to stand up for 4 hours in heels. So I just kind of knock off my shoes, and honestly, it makes me feel a little bit more grounded when I'm recording. So, it's just like a weird thing that I do, and I'm always like, I'm sorry, I'm just like kicking off my boots over here, but I prefer to feel a little bit lower to the ground and centered when I actually record.
Do you have any quirky things that you do to prepare for voicing Josephine?
For Josephine specifically, yes. Again, part of training accent work is that you always want to have like an inline, and even just for character work in general, like if you have to do the voice and you're just like kind of walking in and you've warmed up your voice itself, but like you're not necessarily like ready for the character, what's something you could say to make sure that you sound like them? So like it's the sort of thing where like whoever is recording Bugs Bunny at any time probably goes, what's up, Doc, or something along those lines, just to get the feel of the line right into his mouth so he can record it. For Josephine, it was the inscription on the gates of hell from Dante's Inferno. Inferno. Yeah. Which was like, why, Allegra? Why did you choose something so grimdark to prepare for Josephine of all characters? And the answer is that it was one of the few lines of Italian poetry I could actually remember offhand. So I tried to learn a couple other ones, and I remember them, but it never flowed as well as just doing the inscription. So I recite that every single time before I record.
Can you recite it for us now?
I absolutely can. It's per me se va nella città dolente, per me se va nell'eterno dolore, per me se va tra la perduta gente. Giustizia mozze il mio alto fatore, fecemi la divina potestate, la somma sapienza il primo amore. Dinanzi a me non fuor cose create se non eterno. Dinanzi a me non fuor cose create se non eterne, e io eterno duro. Lasciate ogni speranza voi che intrate.
Wow, that's gorgeous.
Thank you. It's 9 lines of Dante. Brief segue to tell you that Dante Alighieri is super awesome. Okay. So, I read the hell out of the Inferno when I was in college, cause I actually took a dedicated Italian class, that was just analyzing, Dante's Inferno. From like a historical and poetic standpoint. It was one of the best classes I've ever taken, and it was the class that convinced me to actually pursue an Italian minor. So it was one of those things. This is really fascinating, as an aside. So the reason why I memorized it in the first place was because, when I was in Italy, so my family is Italian, and, we have friends who we've all been in the United States for several years, or for several generations at this point. My great grandparents were the ones who emigrated over, but we have friends and family who came over a little bit more recently, and we know a couple who have friends who lived in the city where I studied abroad when I was in Italy, in Padua. And so, they were like, go to dinner with them at some point during your studies. So I did. Very lovely people. It was Dottore Bartletta and his wife. Lovely people. And when I told them, that I had, read Dante, the Dottore started reciting it for me.
Aww.
And it was one of those things that I realized, and it was sort of a very strange realization for me, because I come from a French educational background. That, with the exception of like actors, I want to say, like actors and maybe some like literature people, or literature, like people who are like heavily involved in literary studies or of some capacity. I feel like part of the American, like conscience is we don't necessarily think I want to recite, I want to memorize quotes and poetry for fun. Like it's something that struck me in that moment, like reflecting on it, something that was very European. Because it was something that I did heavily, in my French education. I stopped doing once I started doing an American education, and that I was reminded of hearing the Dottore, recite part of Dante for me. And at the time, the only verse I knew was the first tercet. What is it? It's, oh, God, I can't remember the first word. It's always the first word that I can't remember. And as soon as I see the first word, Inferno, verse 1, I'm just gonna see. Nel mezzo del cammin di nostra vita mi ritrovai per una selva oscura che la diritta via era smarrita. And he said, do you know any more? I said, no. And so he recited the rest of the first page for me. And I was like, this is like phenomenal. And so it really inspired me to want to learn it. So I learned the inscription on the gates of hell. And a couple of years later, I was like, oh gosh, I should probably learn something else so that I'm not reciting the inscription on the gates of hell for Josephine. And I did, but it still didn't work as well as the inscription on the gates of hell. So I read literally the translation is like, through me the way into the bleeding city, through me the way into the grieving city, through me the way into eternal suffering. Before me, no things were created that weren't eternal, and I alone am eternal. And it's just like Josephine Montilyet, ladies and gentlemen. That was it. The inscription on the gates of hell is the most un-Josephine thing ever, but that's what I recite. Merely because it was the one bit of Italian poetry I could remember offhand when I decided that was going to be the best way for me to latch into Josephine and doing the Italian accent was actually just reciting Italian. But yeah. No, and I feel like it's unfair for me to say Americans don't care about poetry, because that's not necessarily true. I just felt like there was less of an emphasis on being able to very proudly recite things outside of, the realm of, Shakespeare or people who can recite Shakespeare offhand. So actors do it and scholars do it, but otherwise people don't necessarily do it. And I feel like or at least the Italians and French people that I know love reciting randomly. So, could be a weird generalization I am making based off of my very limited frame of experience, but, that's the world I've lived in, so I wanted to stay true to that, in a sense, and be like, I want to recite things, So I can recite, can I recite Baudelaire? I can recite Baudelaire in French, I can recite Dante in Italian, and I can recite Shakespeare in English.
Hey, there you go.
So my party tricks.
Do you have any favorite memories from the recording booth?
Absolutely. I've told this story before. I kind of like to switch up what my favorite stories are, but I'm going to come back to this one because I really like it. The Wicked Grace scene, with, just that frickin' nerd laugh. Cullen's nerd laugh. I had so much fun recording that scene in the first place, for the reasons I'd mentioned before. And then, we got to that bit where Varric is telling the story, basically just recounting the very end of Mark of the Assassin with a beautiful pun. And I'm like, this is everything I've ever wanted. And then Cullen's laugh comes in, and I could not stop laughing the entire time. It was one of those things where it was one of those times that Caroline was actually in the room with me. So I kept having to turn back to her and be like, I'm sorry. I'll get myself together. I'll pull it together. But I could not stop laughing. The scene is beautiful. It's that laugh that he does. I can't even imitate it well enough. He did a beautiful job. That nerdy freaking laugh. Nerd laugh. I love that nerd laugh. That day in general was a really fun day. I was actually up in Edmonton recording. So I was in the room with Caroline, and we'd just turn around and talk and chat and be like, well, we should probably be recording right now and stuff like that. But, she was just so much fun to record with. So fun to work with, that it was just a really great experience. And I think I recorded, the Wicked Grace scene, if not the same day as, then the day before I recorded the Iron Bolt romance scene. So that was a fun trip. That was a really fun series of recording sessions. That was good. That's good. I didn't, I'm not sure how everyone else recorded, but, because I had to travel for my sessions, which, by the way, now that I'm actually in North Hollywood and really close to where all the studios are, I'm like, oh, it's going to be so much easier. I don't have to freaking fly in a plane in order to work. Because I, had to travel, they were very conscientious about, like, trying to book many sessions, like, within, like, the 2 to 3 day period. Just so that it would be like, we'd maximize my time so I didn't have to spend too much money, like, or time and money traveling. So, it meant that, like, every time I would record for Josephine, it'd just be like this, like, sucker punch of a couple days of, like, so much fun. And then I was still, working, a desk job, and stuff. So I'd just go back up to Seattle and be like, okay, time to go back to work. Like, I don't get to be an actor right now. Oh. So that was fun.
Were there any times that, as a fan, that you just absolutely just freaked out over certain spoilers that happened in the script?
Gosh, what did I freak out over? So I spent a good amount of time just sort of flailing with adorableness at just Josephine and the romance in particular. I was just like, people are gonna love it so much. So that was a large part of my flailing. I guess character cameos. And it's funny because I was never actually, like, in the room for the character cameos, but I'd find out, like, as a result of the text, where it was like, I found out Hawk was gonna be back, because there was a line that was, Josephine says, I think it's a conditional if you, specifically, have done Winter Palace before Here Lies the Abyss, but, like, only unlocked a certain amount of it. Josephine will say in that scene after, at the very, like, once you get back to Skyhold and, like, the revered mother is there trying to get Cassandra and Leliana back to Valrio, Josephine will say something along the lines of, like, and Varric really wanted to talk to you about his friend Hawk, or something like that. And so it was like, wait, what? What? I saw friend Hawk. Wait, what? Friend Hawk. So that was a moment where it was like, oh my god, my Hawk is coming back. Just everything, like, little things, like, just Solus in the first place, Solus and Blackwall in the first place. I wouldn't say I freaked out so much as just cackled evilly in the background. Okay, let me be honest. Most things that I knew before other people just led me to go like, because I'm evil, just really evil. Just I love knowing things and just watching people speculate and me being like, I know the answer and you'll find out later. Also finding out Logain was going to come back, which I had to ask about because I don't think they very wisely went Hawk and his/her warden friend in order to minimize the amount of lines that we would have to record. Yeah, well, you have to cut corners as much as possible with these things because every it's one of those like sad truths about voiceover. Every time there's like a conditional line like that, that actually costs money.
Yeah.
For in a lot of different areas. So like, you know, they have to be as tight about these things as possible. So warden friend is one of those. Like, you know,
yeah, they have a word budget.
The word budget. The word budget is pretty strict because yeah. So, warden friend, I was like, so who's the warden friend? And it was like, well, Logain can come back. And I was like, Logain, you say? Because I love Logain. Once Alistair and I broke up, I realized how much I loved Logain. So it was great. Because I didn't have to kill Logain constantly anymore. So I got to like actually bring him around a little bit and do, Return to Oscar with him, which was great. Yeah, just like, all the little bits of, like, I feel like I had a lot of little minor flails. And, oh, you want to know what I actually flailed about? Finding out that people who romanced Sarah were going to be able to marry her and trespass her.
Oh, yeah, that was so cute.
I was really, really happy about that because it was like, it's bam, look, same-sex marriage. Like, you know, all the happy lesbians getting to actually, like, marry Sarah right now. I was like, that is the best thing I have heard. I am so excited for this. I hadn't yet, and I still haven't actually like played my Sarah romance yet. But I'm really excited to, especially now knowing this. But just like knowing that like my friends who romance Sarah were gonna get this really, really sweet and touching moment was like, oh man, I'm so happy right now. This is
I
great.
know, it was so cute. It was so touching.
Cute.
I was so excited for it. I did it myself, and I was just like, oh yay, this is happening.
Yeah. And it's like too, like with the duel, I was just so excited because the duel was absolutely like just like a fairy tale rom-com tropey gloriousness. And getting to knowing very, very specifically that, you know, Josephine, I always, every time I recorded her, you can't remove her from the concept that, you know, she is a bisexual character. Like, so every time I would record, I was recording off of Harry, who had set all the pacing. So Harry is a British male inquisitor. But knowing that Alex or Somali could be there instead was like, look at that. Like, this isn't just a duel scene. This is a duel scene that a queer woman will get to experience. Like, a queer woman's gonna come in, like, swashbuckling to save her princess, basically. And that is incredible. So that was something I actually got really, like, kind of low-key excited about. Not, like, flailing actively, but just kind of, like, really excited on behalf of, like, all the gay girls who are gonna get to play that, you know? Like, I was just like, look, you get your fairy tale ending, like, right there. Yeah, finding out those little things like that just on behalf of, you know, like, from, like, a representation standpoint was just, like, really exciting and meaningful for me, too, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like feeling represented, as it turns out. Like, it's cool. I like, gay girls are fun. Like, I really like seeing bi characters, and I really like when women dating women get to experience really cool women dating women content that actually ends happily. I'm like, this is great. I like this.
Yeah.
No more tragic lesbians. No more tragic lesbians. So, and let's be real. Absolutely zero tragic lesbians by the end of Trespasser.
By the end of Trespasser.
Oh yeah,
none.
because you and Josie, all right. This like, and this was this. I know people were upset that you couldn't marry her, and I'm like, oh, you know, yeah, that would have been really cute. Except my running joke on the subject is that if you married Josephine in the Winter Palace, you'd get a critical mission failure. Because her mom would literally just, like, levitate in from the sky. Like, what's all this then? The f*** are you doing? Who said my oldest daughter could get married without her mother there? I joked about that to my dad, too. And I was just like, yeah, we've been joking, but the reason you can't is because no good Italian girl's gonna get married away from her family. My dad's like, yep. He got Huffy on the phone like, yeah, you better not. You better not. Like, that wasn't me saying I was gonna get married away from you, Dad. Oh my gosh. It was a purely hypothetical situation about a video game character. It's not me. But it's you know, just the, you never should see her wedding because her wedding would also be way too expensive to actually render in game. It's not gonna happen. You think she's gonna get married by a gazebo like Cullen? No, that's not how Antivans get married. Antivans get married in, like, big churches. The entire, hitting things here. The entire family comes. Like, all the uncles and cousins, like, cousins upon cousins upon cousins upon cousins that you never knew existed. Guess what? They exist now. They're at your wedding. They got you a gift certificate for Crate and Barrel. And, they are here, and there is food. There's so much food. More food than Dragon Age could ever render. More food than Frostbite 3 could ever render. Because let's be real, she Italian. All of the Hispanic and Italian people listening right now are just nodding like, yup. Too many people, too big of a dress, too many lights around, too many, like, just too much going on, and the food, the people, the dancing. It's too much. It's too expensive.
So, can you tell us if you've been cast in another BioWare game?
I would love